All right, we are ready today to finish up chapter 10 on square roots, square root functions. And we've been working on solving square root functions by doing the opposite, which is to square things. But today we're going to combine a little bit of our square root functions with our quadratics. Okay, so let's get right into it. And let me just make one little adjustment. All right, so let's begin with a function. Actually, let me undo that. Let's just do this. X equals the square root of x plus 6. Okay, so this is a little different than our previous problems that we did on our previous lesson. We're going to call this 10.3b, but you notice that there is a x on this side instead of a regular number. Okay, now to solve this, we're still going to square both sides because we want to get rid of that square root. Okay, but what that does is that creates an x squared over here. And we have x plus 6. Now, hopefully, a couple of you might remember, what do we do as soon as we see that there's an x squared in the problem? In order to solve it, we have to make the other side equal to 0. Okay, so we're going to have to get rid of this x on this side, get rid of this plus 6 on this side, and put them over here, right? And do the opposite. So what does that create? X squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, now I have a quadratic equation set equal to 0. How do I solve it? Well, there's two ways. One, and the most efficient way, is to factor it. If it doesn't factor, we use the quadratic formula. But this one does factor because we're looking for factors of -6 that add up to -1. Okay, so what are our factors of -6 that add up to -1? Go ahead and pause it now and think about that, or write that down on your paper. All right, you should have got x minus 3, x plus 2 equals 0. And then remember, we set each of those equal to 0. It's hard to write small on this. Okay, do the opposite. That's supposed to be a 3. And this is supposed to be minus 2. So minus 2. And so we get x equals positive 3 from this one. I'm going to write it up here. X equals 3 and x equals -2. Now, there's only one problem. We got two answers here, and sometimes those answers don't work out. Both those answers don't work out. One of them will probably work out, but remember, we have our original equation right here, okay? And those numbers have got to work in there, okay? So if I take the 3 and I plug it in there and I plug it in there, do I get the right answer? Well, sure. 3 plus 6 is 9, right? 3 plus 6 in here is 9. And then the square root of 9 is 3, right? So 3 would have been over here with this x, okay? But if I put the -2 in here, I get -2 plus 6 is 4, but I get -2 over here. So the square root of 4, the square root of 4 is 2, but over here my x was -2, and I can't have the square root equal a negative sign. So actually this answer doesn't work. Now don't think just because it's negative, that's why it didn't work. Sometimes negatives work, just in this case, it did not, okay? So really the only answer here is 3. So that's why I've made this a whole new section, is because I wanted this to be, this is gonna be a little more complicated, right? You still gotta square both sides. You have to get a quadratic and set it equal to 0, factor it, and then check these answers here. Okay, let's do another one. Let's see if I can find a good one here. Okay, how about this? 4 minus 3x equals x. Okay, so what are we going to do first? That's right, square both sides. Right, so I get 4 minus 3x equals x squared. Okay, let's move everything over. Let's move this stuff over there by doing the opposite. Okay, so I get, I'm going to change color a little, make it darker. I get x squared plus 3x now minus 4 equals 0. Okay, I'm sorry. We should actually be putting the 0 over here, huh? Not that it really matters. So any factors of -4 that add up to 3. How about x plus 4, x minus 1? And if I set each of those equal to 0, I get -4 and +1. Okay. Now remember our original equation up here. Which one is not going to work? Well, again, in the case of the negative here, because of this x right here, -4 will not work. So our only answer is x equals 1. Okay. Now, every once in a while, it's kind of obvious. Okay. So we might have something like 13 plus the square root of 5n equals 3. Right? So I got to get this 13 over here to the other side. And I get the square root of 5n equals -10. Sorry. Well, at this point, you don't really need to go any further because the square root cannot equal negative, right? You cannot take the square root of a negative number. So square root cannot equal -10. So as soon as I get to that, right, then I know there's no solution because I haven't squared anything yet. All right. So keep that one in mind and have that one ready. And let's do one last example. This one going to be a little tougher, but I know you can handle it. Okay. So that square root is over the whole thing there. Sorry. Okay. So p plus 1 is equal to the square root of 7p plus 15. Okay. Now, we already have the square root by itself over here, and so we can just square both sides. But here's the catch with this. Because you got two things, I'm squaring this side, but then I have to square this side like this. Every other problem that we've only had one term over here. Now we have two. We have p plus 1. And so we got to put parentheses around it and square that. So that's going to require, yes, the FOIL method. So when we FOIL that, we're going to get p squared plus 2p plus 1. And over here, the squared cancels out the square root, and I get 7p plus 15. Okay, so now I got a whole bunch of stuff, but just like we did last semester, we're just going to be combining like terms because I want to get everything over to the other side, right? I want to get these things over to the other side so that I have a 0 to deal with on this side. So the p squared, there's nothing to combine with, but there's going to be a 2p, and then this, I'm going to do the opposite of this guy. That's a -7p. So positive 2p and -7p is -5p. Right? And then I have this positive 1 right here, and then a -15, because I'm going to do the opposite of that. So positive 1 and -15, -14. So see, there was a little extra step there in the foiling part, but really it kind of turned out the same way, right? We still got a quadratic here that we have to factor, or we could put in the quadratic formula. But there are some factors of -14 that add up to -5, right? -7 and 2. So I get p minus 7 and p plus 2 equals 0. And so what is the two answers? I'm going to do the opposite of those. So I'm going to get p equals 7, and I'm going to get p equals -2. Okay. Now, one of those is going to work. One of those is not going to work, right? Why is the -2 not going to work this time? Right? Oops. Because when I plug it in up here, right there, I'm going to get -2 plus 1. Well, that gives me a -1, and my square root cannot equal a -1, and so I know -2 is out. P equals 7 is the only one that I need there. Okay, so again, use this video, pause it, rewind it, do what you need to do to make sure you get it down for your problems today. All right, thanks. That's going to be it for this week. Hope you guys have a good weekend.